Hello and welcome back to Global English Podcast, the place where we break down English for you, the intermediate learner, and turn complex ideas into clear, actionable knowledge. I'm your host, Jordan.
And I'm Taylor. Good to see you, everyone. We are really thrilled you decided to join us for this deep dive.
I have to start with something just incredibly relatable, and I know our listeners feel this deeply, especially when learning English. Have you ever felt completely and utterly drained?
Oh, absolutely.
Not just, physically tired, but mentally exhausted by the sheer noise of the world. I mean, that noise of just constant pressure.
Yes. It's like this signature feeling of the modern era, isn't it? The world seems engineered to keep us performing, explaining, defending our choices.
And comparing. Constantly comparing ourselves to everyone else's highlight reel online.
Exactly. That constant mental engagement is, it's profoundly exhausting.
It is. And for a language learner, this pressure is like doubled. Maybe it's that relentless comparison trap. You see someone else on social media who seems to be speaking perfectly after only 6 months, and you just feel instantly, inadequate.
I see that all the time. Or maybe it's the endless need to justify why you chose a certain study method.
Oh, that's a big one. Or even just dealing with negative people who constantly demand your emotional energy.
It's the feeling that you are always on a stage, right? You feel like you have to be ready to defend your pronunciation, your vocabulary, or your decisions at any moment.
Spot on. So the big question for our listeners today is, how do you protect that precious energy for your learning when the world is so loud? How do you maintain focus and make real progress when you feel this overwhelming pressure from external judgment?
That is precisely our mission today. We are diving deep into a topic that shows how choosing silence and focusing inward can actually be your language learning superpower.
I love that.
And this isn't just, fluffy self-help. It connects directly to core academic strategies for efficiency. We'll be connecting that inner clarity to the research concept of learner autonomy.
I love that twist.
Yeah.
We're going to reveal why stopping a fight or simply deciding not to defend yourself is a successful strategy for both peace and progress. And later, you're going to challenge us all with a pop quiz
I am.
on 3 essential words for personal growth and language fluency that we unpack today: drained, autonomous, and facilitating.
Get ready to solidify some new vocabulary and move those words from your passive memory into your active speaking bank.
Before we dive into the sources that inspired this deep dive, please do us a huge favor. Subscribe to Global English Podcast and like this deep dive right now. It really helps us bring you more focused, clear, and entertaining content every week.
Thank you so much for that support. It really means a lot. Now let's frame our mission. Today's deep dive pulls from 3 distinct but highly related areas: psychological self-improvement, the academic concept of learner autonomy, and specific university research on reading efficiency and input types.
That sounds like a fascinating sack. It's the
Yeah.
perfect blend of, mindset and methodology.
It is. We are looking at why focusing on yourself and choosing silence is so critical for English learners, not just for mental health, but for learning efficiency. And then we connect that powerful personal philosophy to the heavy-hitting academic concept of learner autonomy.
Right.
And how it influences your ability to learn effectively, particularly through structured listening and reading strategies.
Okay, let's unpack this psychological element first.
Sure.
The core concept is about silence as a form of strength and clarity. And I love this idea you mentioned of the spotlight and the internal stage.
Yes. The initial insight from the psychological sources is that we feel like we are constantly on a stage, always performing for an imaginary audience. This is especially true when you are navigating a new language. You imagine people are watching and judging every little mistake, every awkward pause.
Oh, every failure you might have when you try to speak. That feeling is so intense. I remember when I first started learning another language, I mispronounced a word. I felt that physical reaction. My face would get hot.
Yep.
And I'd immediately feel like the entire room was focused on my blunder, not on the actual conversation.
That intense self-consciousness is known as the spotlight effect. We are the central characters in our own movie, so we assume we are the central characters in everyone else's movie, too.
Which is, it's absolutely untrue.
It's completely untrue. The beautiful truth, which the sources point out, is the reality. Most people are actually too busy thinking about their own worries, their own fears, and their own internal battles.
They're just not paying that much attention.
No one is watching you as closely as you think you are being watched. They're internally rehearsing what they will say next, or worrying about their job, or just wondering what to eat for dinner.
That's a huge mental shift. When I look back, I realized that the pressure I felt was like 90% internal. The moment you stop focusing outward, stop explaining and defending your choices, your progress, or your methods, you gain incredible freedom.
You realize the stage was only in your mind. Silence is the freedom that comes from leaving that stage. It allows you to breathe and realize that your mistakes are rarely monumental in the eyes of others.
That leads perfectly into the idea of confidence.
Mm.
Because it feels so awkward to be silent sometimes.
Mm.
Like people will think something is wrong or that you are slow or maybe even rude. So we talk just to fill the gap and prove we are capable.
That is a very common tendency, particularly in cultures where quick replies are valued. We rush to fill the void. But silence prevents you from rushing to prove yourself. Instead, it allows you to observe, process, and formulate a better response.
Okay, but what if that silence is interpreted as arrogance or, passive aggressiveness in certain cultures?
Yeah.
How do we ensure our silence is strategic strength and not just miscommunication?
That's a critical question. The key distinction is in the intention and the context. Strategic silence isn't a passive weapon. It's a tool for active listening and internal calibration.
Internal calibration, I like that.
So when someone asks you a question in English, taking 3 full seconds to process their words, formulate your thoughts, and check your grammar silently before speaking, that shows respect for the conversation, not rudeness.
So it's not about being stone-faced or deliberately ignoring someone. It's about taking necessary processing time.
Exactly. And when you finally speak, your words gain weight. People listen because they know you chose the moment and you mean what you say.
Mm.
Real confidence, as the sources define it, is not needing constant external approval or constantly needing to talk all the time. It's the control you have over your own response and your own pace.
So silence isn't weakness, it's a form of control. You are asserting your pace in the conversation.
Absolutely. Silence is a strategy that protects your time and your peace. And this concept of protecting your peace is tied directly to protecting your energy. This is vital for busy learners who are balancing work, family, and study.
We often feel utterly exhausted after certain social interactions, right? Those people who are constantly draining us with complaints, gossip, or demands for emotional attention, the energy vampires.
That's a very apt term for them. The more you explain yourself to these demanding people, or the more you try to defend your life choices or your study hours to them, the more mentally and emotionally exhausted you become. Your internal resources, which should be reserved for focusing on complex English tasks, are simply being used up.
This is a perfect moment to use our expansion protocol because that feeling of being run down is so important. Let's stop and unpack the word drained. What exactly does it mean and how can we use it effectively?
Drained is a fantastic word because it's used so often in casual English to describe emotional states, moving far beyond its literal meaning related to water.
Okay, lay it out for us. The definition, the examples, and the scenario.
Will do. Drained. The core definition is to make someone very, very tired, usually emotionally or physically. It means running out of energy completely, as if you are a battery that has been fully discharged and needs time to recharge.
That visualization of a dead battery or an empty reservoir is spot on. Give us the example looping.
Okay, let's start formal. Running a marathon can exhaust even the strongest athletes, leaving them totally spent. Exhaust is the formal verb that drained derives its feeling from.
Got it. Now casual.
Casual. After giving long, complicated explanations to my friend about why I couldn't help them move furniture for the 5th time, I felt completely drained and couldn't focus on my studies afterward.
Oh, the classic over-explanation drain. I know that feeling. What about a funny or weird example?
Okay, funny one. Trying to justify my pizza choice, the one with pineapple and anchovies, obviously, to my fitness instructor left me mentally drained. I think the intensity of his disapproval just used up all my mental reserves.
You lost the fight and the energy. Now, let's quickly improv a mini-skit using drained. Let's make it about a language learning situation where one person is demanding too much attention.
Sounds good. I'll be the student who constantly needs free, personalized help from you, even though you have your own deadlines.
And I'll be the student who is trying to protect my study time, recognizing I have no energy left.
Hey, I know you're supposed to be studying the passive voice right now, but I have this essay I need you to check. It's 20 pages, and I need you to correct all the grammar and suggest better vocabulary before midnight. Can you help?
Oh, wow. No, I really can't right now. I spent the whole morning on a video call with a distant relative who only wanted to complain about their life for 3 hours. Honestly, that conversation alone left me totally drained. I have zero capacity left for analytical work tonight.
But you're so good at proofreading, just an hour. If you don't help me, I might fail the assignment.
I understand you're worried, but precisely because I am so drained, I wouldn't do a good job. And I also need to protect the energy I have left for my own goals. Maybe you could use an online grammar checker instead.
Fine. I guess I'll have to try to manage it autonomously, but I still wish you had the energy.
Maybe when I fully recharge, my brain battery is currently at 1%.
Excellent. The feeling is clear. In terms of collocations, drained is often paired with emotionally, physically, mentally, completely, or left feeling.
Right.
So you might say, I was left feeling emotionally drained after the meeting, or I am too mentally drained to start a new chapter.
I love that deep dive into the word. And that connects directly back to the power of silence. Silence is like a shield that protects you from these people who drain you. You don't owe them an explanation every time. You can just say no, or in some cases, just stay silent.
Precisely. And this strategy applies directly to another major energy thief, trauma.
Ooh, drama. Arguments, gossip, unnecessary fights over tiny things. They pull focus away from what truly matters, your English goals. They hijack your precious mental resources.
Drama thrives on reaction and attention. It's like a file that needs fuel. If you argue or defend every little comment, rumor, or perceived slight, you are feeding it. The sources emphasize that the moment you stop reacting, the drama starves.
But it's incredibly hard not to defend yourself. My instinct is always to clarify the truth, to prove the rumor wrong, or to win the argument.
I know, it feels natural to defend, especially if your reputation is involved. But real strength is knowing when not to. Silence is the superior strategy because it protects your time and your peace from unnecessary fights and rumors.
So you're not losing.
No, by refusing to engage, you're asserting control over your most valuable resource, your mental peace.
So if someone is spreading gossip about my study habits, instead of engaging in a long argument about why I prefer Duolingo to flashcards, I should just let it go and keep studying.
Absolutely. Let your results be the defense. Every minute you spend defending yourself is a minute you aren't spending on improving your English. The person who is focused on drama has an external focus. The person who is focused on growth has an internal focus.
That's a huge shift in mindset. It's not about being passive. It's about being strategically non-reactive.
And that leads naturally into how we approach our personal goals. If you are focusing inward, you must protect your goals too.
I see this all the time.
Yeah.
People talk endlessly about their goals on social media. I'm going to learn 100 words a day, or I'm starting a new advanced certificate next month, and then a month later they stop and they feel ashamed.
That happens because the energy leaks out. When you talk too much about goals, especially new, untested goals, you lose the vital energy needed to actually act on them.
Oh, is that a real thing?
Yeah, there's a psychological theory that suggests when you announce a goal, your brain often confuses the verbal recognition, getting praise or likes, with achieving the actual goal, which diminishes your drive.
So the announcement gives you a mini reward. And that reward tricks your motivation center into thinking the hard work is already done.
Precisely. And worse, you expose your vulnerable goal to criticism, doubt, or jealousy from others, which can weaken your resolve, especially if you suffer from low self-efficacy.
So the focus phrase here is simple and powerful. Talk less, move more.
Exactly. Goals should grow strong roots, like seeds hidden deep in the soil, protected from harm and noise until they are ready to sprout. Don't announce the plan, announce the finished product.
That connects to the final psychological point. Growth often means outgrowing people around you. When you focus inward and make rapid progress, friends might say, you've changed, like it's a negative thing.
That phrase, you've changed, often comes from a place of personal discomfort. Your growth makes them look inward at their own stagnation, and that can make them uncomfortable.
Never thought of it that way.
But growth requires change. You are not meant to stay the same forever, especially when you are actively trying to improve a skill like English.
So if focusing on my English studies means I have less time for the friend who constantly drains me or who criticizes my choices, that's okay.
It is more than okay. It is necessary for your autonomy. Silence helps protect the new you and the new boundaries you set. It is absolutely fine to set boundaries and let go of people who no longer walk the same path.
Wow.
The key takeaway is, outgrowing people isn't selfish. It's a necessary sign of progress and self-care. You don't owe anyone the old version of yourself.
Wow. That's a powerful foundation.
Yeah.
We've established that inner silence leads to clarity, confidence, and protected energy. Now, how does this inner focus connect to making actual technical progress in English?
This is where we shift seamlessly to the academic research. The philosophy of self-focus and taking responsibility for your energy aligns perfectly with the core concept of successful independent language learning, learner autonomy, or LA.
Okay, Let's connect this self-focus to the academic concept that helps us learn faster. This sounds like an essential concept for every listener to grasp. Let's hit the next expansion protocol right now. What exactly does autonomous mean in plain English?
Great question. Autonomous. This is a high-level academic term, but we can really simplify it.
Let's do the deep dive. Definition, examples, and a scenario.
Autonomous. The core definition is the capacity to take charge of one's own learning. It means being fully responsible for decisions about your own goals, your resources, your strategies, and your self-assessment, independent of a teacher or a curriculum.
So it's about being the boss of your own study process and choosing the path that works for you without waiting for permission.
Precisely. You choose what, how, and when you learn based on your own internal motivation and assessment.
Okay, let's run the examples. Formal first.
Formal. The university research studied students developing autonomous learning skills through self-selected extensive reading programs, which allowed them to choose their own books and monitor their progress. Casual. My sister is an incredibly autonomous learner. She never waits for the teacher to tell her what to do next. She's always finding new apps, YouTube channels, and materials that fit her specific interests.
And the funny or weird scenario.
My dog is surprisingly autonomous when it comes to finding dropped food. He uses complex, independent search strategies without asking for human assistance or supervision.
The truly independent scavenger. Now for the improvised scenario. Let's talk about a learner trying to decide what to study next.
I'll play the well-meaning but overbearing friend who wants to tell you exactly what to do.
And I will be the autonomous learner protecting my plan.
Okay, you should really focus only on grammar right now. Everyone knows you need to pass the B2 grammar test first. You should buy this textbook, follow Chapter 5 exactly, and ignore everything else.
I appreciate the suggestion, but I've made an autonomous decision based on my career goals. I need better speaking fluency for my job, so my focus is going to be 70% active listening and only 30% grammar review.
But what if you fail the test because you didn't follow the traditional method? That's too risky.
It's a calculated risk, and I am responsible for the result. Being an autonomous learner means trusting my own assessment of my needs, not blindly following a predefined path. I will adjust if needed, but the decision is mine.
That is the perfect demonstration of LA. Collocations for autonomous are often paired with words like learner, process, decision-making, or study. An autonomous learner makes autonomous decisions about their learning process.
That makes perfect sense. So if we embrace that inner silence and confidence we discussed earlier, we are naturally preparing ourselves to become more autonomous learners. We're focusing inward and taking responsibility for our own success.
Exactly. The internal focus prevents the anxiety and distraction that stop you from choosing your own path. And the academic research backs this up by showing what factors actively facilitate this success.
That word, facilitate, is another key piece of academic language. Let's stop and unpack it right now. I hear facilitating a lot in academic talks. How can I use it simply and correctly in a sentence?
This word is vital for sounding articulate and academic. So let's define facilitating.
Let's run the protocol. Definition, examples, and the scenario.
Facilitating. It means to make an action or process easier or possible. It's about providing the ideal conditions, resources, or environment for something good to happen or for growth to occur. It doesn't do the work, but it smooths the path.
I understand. It's creating the right environment and removing obstacles. Give us the example looping.
Formal. Technology advancements, particularly AI translation tools, significantly facilitate rapid access to information and resources, making deep self-study easier than ever before.
Casual.
Casual. My new weekly schedule, which includes waking up an hour earlier, facilitates my evening study time better because I am less stressed and not rushing home from work.
Yeah, the funny one.
Good lighting dramatically facilitates finding my misplaced keys in the morning. It makes the search possible and easier by improving the conditions.
That's a very practical application. Now let's improvise a quick skit about how we manage our podcast recording.
Okay, we're about to record. The university sources we have pulled for this deep dive are complex.
They are. But having the complete, organized transcript notes in a shared digital document where we can highlight key terms really facilitates our discussion flow. We don't waste time searching for specific data points.
Exactly. The clear structure and the high-quality notes facilitate the process, allowing us to focus entirely on delivering the deep dive to the listener, rather than worrying about the organization.
Perfect. Collocations for facilitate are typically things like growth, development, process, progress, or communication.
Spot on.
It's almost always paired with something positive that is moving forward due to favorable conditions.
Exactly. Now that we understand autonomous and facilitating, let's dive into the detailed list of what the research says actually helps students become autonomous. This data is pulled from a study focusing on tertiary level English majors, but the principles apply to any dedicated learner.
What was the strongest internal factor identified?
It was overwhelmingly intrinsic motivation. These students weren't studying just to pass a test or get a high score. That would be extrinsic motivation.
Right.
They were driven by a genuine desire for high academic achievement and, critically, a clear internal understanding of the value of English for their future careers. They knew why they were learning.
That goes straight back to the inner focus we talked about, doesn't it? If you have clarity on your future and your own internal goals, you don't need external validation or constant praise. External noise doesn't matter because your own internal drive is so powerful.
Absolutely. External comparison, the noise, can actually destroy intrinsic motivation, forcing learners to rely only on extrinsic rewards like grades or approval. The autonomous learner studies because they genuinely enjoy the language and see its value, not just because the teacher assigned homework.
Can you give us an analogy to clarify intrinsic versus extrinsic?
Sure. Think of learning like gardening. Intrinsic motivation is like the gardener who works hard because they love seeing things grow and they love being outside. The process is the reward. Extrinsic motivation is like the contractor who only gardens because they are paid a salary at the end of the month. Both get the job done, but the intrinsic gardener maintains their passion even when the weather is bad.
That makes the difference very clear. So what about external factors that facilitate autonomy?
The role of the teacher influence was high, but specifically, teachers who adopted a certain style. The most autonomous learners reported being helped by teachers who were committed and enthusiastic, offered supplementary reading material, and strongly encouraged students to seek answers on their own.
So the best teachers aren't the ones who give all the answers,
No.
but the ones who inspire the hunt for knowledge and provide the right tools to conduct that hunt. They facilitate, they don't force.
Precisely. This is the constructivist approach, the idea that you actively build new knowledge on top of old knowledge rather than just passively receiving it from an authority figure. A teacher might say, I see you have a problem with this grammar point. I will not give you the rule, but here are 3 websites and a research article. Come back tomorrow with your best hypothesis.
That's empowering. What other facilitating factors did the research highlight?
There was strong external support from family members and friends who spoke English well, providing a natural, low-stakes social context for practice.
That makes sense.
And crucially, tech usage. Students who could effectively use computer software and mobile apps like Anki or Quizlet demonstrated higher autonomy because they could self-monitor and self-assess their progress outside of class time.
Self-monitoring is key to autonomy. It means you don't need a teacher to tell you if you're making progress. You look at your own data.
Exactly. These factors, intrinsic drive, empowering teachers, supportive environment, and tech skills, create the fertile ground that facilitates autonomous growth.
This sounds ideal, but if we want to be truly autonomous, we also have to understand the challenges, the factors that impede learner autonomy. This is where that need for self-focus and silence becomes even more critical.
Yes, the research identified significant internal hurdles that hold students back. The biggest was low self-efficacy or overwhelming shyness. Over 69% of surveyed students agreed that discomfort conversing in English with teachers, friends, or foreigners was a major hurdle.
That feeling is terrifying. It's what we mentioned earlier, the fear of being judged on the internal stage.
It connects directly to our first segment. If you are terrified of making a mistake, you won't take charge of your learning. You'll wait for the teacher to lead, because following instructions feels safer than making an independent, visible error.
Can we define this fear more specifically? What are the symptoms of foreign language anxiety?
Foreign language anxiety, or FLA, is a very common type of performance anxiety. It manifests physically and mentally. Physically, you might experience a fast heart rate, sweaty palms, or a trembling voice when asked to speak.
Yep, been there.
Mentally, your mind goes completely blank. Even if you knew the vocabulary 5 minutes ago, you can't retrieve it.
The famous blank mind phenomenon.
Yes. And the main behavioral result is avoidance. Students suffering from FLA will avoid speaking in class, avoid asking questions, and avoid independent practice, which naturally kills autonomy. The only way to combat this is to build that strong inner confidence that allows you to tolerate mistakes and silence the internal judge.
What other internal problems impede LA?
Others included a lack of awareness. Students didn't know what they should learn outside of class, or struggled to identify effective personal learning styles. They hadn't developed the reflective skills needed for autonomy.
Okay, what about the external hurdles? Things outside the student's immediate control.
The sources pointed a clear finger at some traditional teaching methods. Teacher over-explanation was a significant barrier. Teachers who explain everything and provide exact answers stop students from developing independence.
That sounds like that positivist learning class you mentioned earlier. What does that mean for our listeners?
That's right. Positivist learning traditionally views the teacher as the sole, ultimate source of knowledge, the transmitter. The student is the passive receiver. If the key is always provided immediately, the student never develops the skill of independent problem solving, searching, or critical thinking. They become dependent on the authority figure.
So if a teacher immediately says, the answer to question 7 is B, because of Rule X, the student gets the answer, but they don't develop the ability to figure out Rule X for themselves next time.
Exactly. It stifles their growth and prevents them from making the independent decisions necessary for autonomy. Another factor was the quality of learning materials. Students noted that course books sometimes contained outdated or irrelevant information, or focused only on language features rather than prompting critical thinking and self-directed research.
Right. If the material isn't engaging or relevant to my life goals, the intrinsic motivation just plummets, and the student loses the desire to explore it autonomously.
And finally, the issue of unrealistic goals. One study mentioned extensive reading courses where goals were set too high, like targeting 120,000 words read in a short term. High goals can lead to student resistance and burnout, forcing them to resist the very course meant to help them.
So the goal has to be challenging, but not so challenging that you just feel completely drained and give up.
Exactly. A goal must be challenging enough to inspire, but attainable enough to prevent mental exhaustion. The best autonomous goals are set by the student and are flexible.
That makes perfect sense. And this leads us perfectly into the final major topic: reading and listening strategies, and how to manage the intensity of your input once you're the boss of your own learning.
Absolutely. Being autonomous means selecting the right input strategy for the right moment. There is a huge debate among learners about input. The difference between just having Netflix on in the background versus actually sitting down to study a podcast transcript.
This is the input debate: active versus passive listening. And the sources provide a really nuanced view, moving away from the old idea that passive listening is entirely useless.
The distinction is based on what kind of knowledge you are trying to acquire, implicit or explicit.
Wait, those are two crucial technical words. For our B1 audience, how do we differentiate implicit and explicit knowledge?
Great point. Explicit knowledge is the knowledge you can define, explain, and write down, like knowing the rule for the past simple tense, or the definition of the word facilitate. You consciously learned it.
Okay.
Implicit knowledge is the knowledge you use without thinking, like knowing how to ride a bicycle or instantly knowing the correct pronunciation of a word without ever having studied its phonetic transcription.
Implicit knowledge is intuitive, and explicit knowledge is rule-based and retrievable.
Precisely. Now let's apply that to listening. What is passive listening? Passive listening is exposure to language, hearing it in the background, or listening without fully concentrating while doing other tasks like walking the dog, commuting on the metro, or being at the gym. You are not forced to engage or respond. It's like background music.
So I'm listening to English, but I'm not mentally trying to understand every single word or grammar point.
Yeah.
I'm just getting ambient exposure.
Correct. The primary benefit of this exposure is that it develops implicit, intuitive knowledge. It trains your ear to the rhythm, intonation, and flow. It helps you recognize where words start and end, preparing your brain for future understanding. It's excellent for consistent exposure when you are too drained for deep focus.
That sounds great for ear training and consistency. Now, what is active listening?
Active listening involves focused attention and deep engagement with the material. This is a laboratory-style study. You are consciously trying to analyze the vocabulary and grammar structures. It can involve advanced techniques like shadowing repeating immediately after the speaker or pausing the audio to look up a word or write a summary.
So active listening treats listening as a skill to be developed intentionally. What are the results?
Active listening improves listening comprehension, vocabulary development, and overall proficiency faster. It gives you explicit, retrievable knowledge. If you listen actively and analyze the structures, you're much more likely to be able to reproduce what you've heard effectively when you speak or write.
So if I only listen passively, I might intuitively know the correct pronunciation of a word, implicit, but I might not be able to actively use it myself in a complex sentence, explicit, because I never critically engaged with the structure.
Exactly. The knowledge is in your ear, but not yet in your speaking pathway. This is why many students can read a novel in English but struggle to speak about it. They have strong receptive skills, but weak productive skills.
But here's the crucial insight that ties this whole input debate together. Comprehensible input.
Yes, this is the non-negotiable rule. Passive listening with incomprehensible input is largely a waste of time. You need to understand enough to make educated guesses.
How much do I need to understand for input to be comprehensible?
The strong recommendation is that you must understand between 60% and 95% of the material for learning to be efficient.
Why does that range work?
Because if you understand 100%, it's too easy. You aren't learning anything new. If you understand less than 60%, your brain can't use context and pattern recognition to fill in the new gaps. It simply becomes meaningless gibberish, which leads to frustration and anxiety, the opposite of learner autonomy.
Okay, so the strategy for the autonomous learner is to mix and match.
Absolutely. Use passive listening strategically when you are already trained, at the gym, on the bus, or doing chores. This is for consistency and ear training. But reserve time for active listening, sitting down with a transcript, focusing on vocabulary lists, and engaging critically when you have the mental energy to commit. This balance is an autonomous decision you make based on your own internal energy levels.
So the overarching theme of this deep dive is that clarity and confidence are internal superpowers that allow us to become highly autonomous learners. And that autonomy allows us to choose the right, most effective strategies like balancing active and passive input based on our energy.
It's all interconnected. Your inner peace dictates your study habits and ultimately facilitates your success.
That brings us beautifully to our segment on common mistakes. As an intermediate learner, I've often heard people confuse verbs that seem similar but are used in very different ways. For example, can I say, the good study group is help my learning?
That is a very common and understandable error. It shows a confusion between the simple verb help and the more precise action of creating conditions for success, which is where our word facilitate comes in. Also, help would be conjugated as is helping or just helps.
So how should a native speaker correctly and professionally phrase that idea?
Native speakers would generally say, the study group helps my learning, or if they wanted to sound more professional and academic, they might say, the study group facilitates my learning process.
What's the key difference in grammar or usage between help and facilitate that prevents native speakers from substituting them equally?
The difference is subtle but important, and it relates to the type of object the verb takes. Help is a simple, direct action. It means contributing to the solution. The group helps me study.
All right.
Facilitate, however, is about creating the conditions or removing the barriers for ease. It often takes a direct object that is a conceptual idea or a system, not a person.
So facilitate implies a broader process or a system.
Correct. You use it when the action is less about physically assisting someone and more about removing obstacles, such as, the new quiet library hours facilitate a deep study environment. Notice that facilitate takes the conceptual object, a deep study environment, which is a condition, not the person being helped.
I see. So when talking about these structures and systems that make my language acquisition easier, like the teacher's positive influence, the new schedule or the availability of apps facilitate is the stronger, more precise word.
Exactly. It shows you understand the nuance that these external factors are creating the conditions for your success, which ultimately comes from your autonomous effort.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've covered everything from managing inner noise to choosing the right study mode and understanding the academic concepts behind our success. Now it's time to test that retrievable, explicit knowledge. Hit us with a pop quiz.
Let's do it. Listener, try to shut up the answers before I do. We're focusing on the three main vocabulary words we unpacked today: drained, facilitating, and autonomous.
I'm ready. Bring the pressure.
Question 1. If your phone battery runs out of power, or if a very emotional conversation with a friend leaves you totally exhausted, which word describes that feeling of having no energy left?
That is absolutely drained.
Yeah.
I was left feeling mentally drained after that intense test.
Correct. Emotional exhaustion is a key usage of that word.
To start.
Question 2. Which word describes a learner who has achieved the independence and capacity to select their own goals, strategies, and study materials without needing constant direction from a teacher?
That is the autonomous learner. They are fully independent decision makers in their own learning process.
Perfect. They have taken charge.
Last one, let's see the application.
Question 3. If a company provides a quiet office space, new high-speed computers, and clear training manuals to make the workflow easier and smoother, what is the company doing to the employee's success and progress? It is their development.
It is facilitating their development. It's creating the most favorable conditions for success.
3 out of 3. And to our listener, we hope you scored high too. This practice is essential for moving that implicit knowledge into explicit, retrievable knowledge.
Before we sign off, let's quickly summarize the 3 key takeaways from this deep dive into focus and learning strategy.
First, remember that silence is power. It protects your mental energy, allowing you to focus inward. This builds deep internal confidence, which is visible to others, and prevents you from being constantly drained by external noise and comparison.
Second, autonomy is key. Becoming the boss of your own learning process, setting your own goals, selecting relevant resources, and choosing your strategies is essential for rapid, sustainable proficiency gains. The highly autonomous learner is the successful learner.
And finally, input matters. You need to strategically balance passive listening, which is great for ear training and consistency, with active listening, which is essential for vocabulary and grammar acquisition. And crucially, ensure that input is comprehensible. You must understand at least 60% of what you are consuming for it to be efficient and facilitate real learning.
I love that summary. And now for our final provocative thought and micro challenge. Your peace is precious, and that inner peace speaks louder than words. It is the fuel for your learning engine.
That inner peace is the energy source you must protect fiercely.
So, here is your micro challenge for the week. Identify one thing or person that consistently leaves you feeling drained. This week, practice using silence, quiet distance, or a simple boundary-setting no to protect your energy and time. Reserve that saved energy for an active English study session. Become a more autonomous decision-maker about your own resources.
Use your silence as a strategic tool for growth.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to Global English Podcast. We are so grateful for your attention today.
We truly appreciate you joining us on this deep dive.
I'm Jordan. See you next time.
And I'm Taylor.